Supergirl stars Millie Alcock, Eve Ridley, Matthias Schoenhardt, David Cornsweet, and Jason Momoa. It's the second theatrical entry in the DCU, taking place after the events of the first Superman movie. This movie has both critics and fans divided on whether this film is good or bad. Does it deserve all the hate it's been getting, or does this movie not exceed expectations? Well, today I'm just going to go into some of my thoughts about the movie and give my little review about it. I'm Night Owl, and let's talk about Supergirl. So, first of all, I want to just talk about some of the pros for this movie. And first and foremost, I just want to say Millie Alcock, she absolutely shines as Supergirl. Her performance is on another level, and she brings her A game for this movie from start to finish. The amount of grief and suffering that Kara portrays in some of her scenes stand out tremendously, and Millie Alcock, she just gives it her best. Kara's gone through so much struggle within this movie, from the destruction of Argo City, her people slowly dying on Krypton from kryptonite poisoning, and her struggles of trying to discover who she is as a person in a post-Krypton setting is really amazing to see on screen. And her interactions with Krypto are also really nice as well too, Krypto being her last real true reminder of Krypton, and her desire to try and save her last connection is really powerful as well too, that I think stands out tremendously in the film. She gives an all-star performance, and there's no denying that whatsoever. Eve Ridley also stands out as Ruthie as well, and she is shown to be sort of like a reflection of a younger version of Kara, having to endure some pain and suffering on her side as well too, with having to witness the death of her family. Kind of in a way, she mirrors a younger version of Kara, and they bounce off each other like an older sister, younger sister type of dynamic, which is also very interesting to see as well, and I think it works in this film's favor really tremendously. Jason Momoa also shines as Lobo as well, and I have really enjoyed his portrayal as Aquaman in the previous DC films, and I was honestly really interested to see what they were going to do with him being recast as Lobo. A part of me was kind of curious if he could actually pull it off, or if it would just end up being like John Krasinski cast as Mr. Fantastic. A fan casting that would work on paper, but once it's brought onto screen, it doesn't really work as well. Fortunately though, Momoa does bring it as Lobo, and it's almost as if he's taken directly from the comics and from certain adaptations as well, and he just takes the role as his own and brings it to another level. He stands out tremendously as Lobo, and I was just grinning from ear to ear just seeing this version on screen. A personal nitpick that I have for this portrayal is I was really hoping he would use some of his own personal swears that he does in the comics, kind of like similar to his alien race that he uses there. Who knows, maybe if we get another project with Lobo in it, or if we get a Lobo solo film, maybe they might explore the character a little bit more and actually give that little side as well. But either way, I was still very entertained with what they did with Lobo as a character. The action scenes were also very entertaining and dynamic as well, and like I mentioned before, I think one of the main highlights is not only Millie's performance as Supergirl, but the dynamics between her and Ruthie, how they both kind of mirror each other. Ruthie reminds Kara a lot about a younger version of herself, and she's trying to steer Ruthie past that version that will lead her down to a more jaded and cynical path, where she doesn't really care too much about what's around her, and she only doesn't have as many attachments to those that are really present with her. She at first tries to push away Ruthie by not trying to be attached to her own quest to avenge her family, and later on, once they get to know each other a little bit more and actually have their dynamic bond, she sees that Ruthie will go down the same path as her, and she wants to try and preserve that little bit of innocence that's still left within her. So Ruthie doesn't see the world as dark and grim as Kara does for certain parts of the movie, as we've seen in some areas for some scenes in this film. Overall, again, the character dynamics between Kara and Ruthie are really well, and the characterizations between most of these characters that are introduced for the first time are done very fantastically, and I think are a real highlight for this film. One other area that I think also does work as well is some of the score and the soundtrack. I thought the soundtrack was pretty entertaining, and some areas were done very well as far as the use for different music scores and songs, so I thought that was a nice touch as well. Although there are several different highlights in the movie that do stand out very well, there are a couple issues that I do tend to have. One of them being with the main villain, Krem of the Yellow Hills. Just like in the original comic that this movie is based off of, the film doesn't really do too much to really make Krem stand out as a villain. He tends to come off a little bit one note, and he's just evil just for the sake of being evil. And not to say that's not the same thing that happens in the comic as well. The comic, again, he's very one note and just not as very compelling as a villain there. The film does do something very interesting where they show him and his gang kidnapping young girls and just using them for nefarious purposes. So that is a little interesting aspect that they do try to implement for this film in this aspect. But again, Prem is mainly just there as a plot device used for Kara and Ruthie just to obtain their own goals. Ruthie just to be able to avenge her family for killing them, and Kara using this advantage to try and get the antidote to save Crypto. The design for Krim also is a little bit too overkill as well, where it looks as if he's taken directly from Mad Max, as opposed to the comics where he's just got a basic design where he's got nothing but just a pair of pants and he's just shirtless. So the pacing also does seem to be a little off in a couple areas, not throughout the entire film, but it felt like it was weird in a couple smaller sections. The beginning for the first hour seemed to be going really well as far as pacing. Everything was moving very well and very well paced, whereas a little bit in the middle portion of the film, it does kind of stagger just a little bit, not a lot, but it feels like in a couple areas it does kind of stumble where it needs to try and like remember where it's trying to go for its overarching point at the end. So it does kind of feel like it does stumble just a little bit in my opinion. And one area that I felt that could have been enhanced just a little bit is just some of the color aspects for the film. The graphic novel that this movie is based off of, Woman of Tomorrow, has some really gorgeous and beautiful artwork that is incredible to look at on every single reread every time I look at that novel. And with this film, not to say that the color grading is bad, but there are a couple areas where I wish they would have used some more colors to make it pop out and just stand out a little bit more. But then again, I feel like that's what they were trying to go for as far as this sort of storytelling this time around, especially with Kara's story. Now, although there are a few elements that don't make this film great, it's not to say that this is a terrible movie right off the bat. In some areas, this can almost be compared to some of the earlier entries for Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like The Incredible Hulk, Thor, or even Iron Man 2. They're all solid movies with some really good elements in them, but they all lack a certain area that really makes them rise to greatness. And let's be honest as well too, both Superman and Supergirl are both very distinctive films. Last year we saw Superman as very light, hopeful, showing the brighter side of the character, whereas Supergirl, we get a more grungy and a more jaded side of the character where we see her not holding back her punches, and we see that little difference between the two, where we're exploring Kara's struggles of having to grow up on a portion of her planet where is slowly dying, whereas Clark, we have seen his character, he doesn't really have too much of a connection with Krypton as much. We see him interacting with his Kryptonian heritage just a little bit throughout his film last year, but it's not like we have too many moments of him coming to grips with the destruction of his own planet as much. Whereas in this film, we do see Kara's struggles and where she's coming from as her character and her overarching growth and her arcs throughout this film. We see her struggling with having to watch her family slowly die with kryptonite poisoning. We see some of the struggles of the city of Argo being destroyed. We see her trying to fight to be able to preserve that last little bit of hope and that last little reminder of who she was, that is being Krypto and trying to save her best friend. We see all those struggles there. And we also see, even before the story even starts as well too, her own struggles of trying to accept who she is and really learning where she actually fits in, going from planet to planet, hopping around just to be able to suppress some of those memories of Krypton and not being able to belong in any real setting for where she's at. And honestly, I think that really does work in this film's favor, just to really differentiate the two and actually tell a unique and interesting story on its own. I wasn't expecting to see another version of Superman in this film. I was expecting to see a new and unique take on the character, and honestly, I was able to get that, and I was still very entertained with what we got. Again, were there a couple little stumbles along the way just to get there? Sure, of course, but again, it was still very interesting to see this version of this character and where we were able to go from here. And I really like this interesting take where we got to see more of this point of view, where we see Kara's pain and struggles and suffering, and also being introduced to Ruthie as well too, being the light that was needed in Kara's life at this point. Overall, I think I would rank this film a 7 out of 10. It's still a very solid watch, and it has some really good elements to it. The acting is still phenomenal, and the characters that are introduced are really entertaining to watch as well. Again, there are a couple elements that I feel could have been done just a little bit better throughout this film, but overall, it's still a fun time, and I wouldn't say this is the worst film that DC has made. There are clearly other terrible films that have been out there that really deserve the hate that are the worst DC films, even the worst superhero movies in general. But again, I feel like this movie is being overhated because of its new take on this character and this new take on this story. I don't think this movie deserves the hate that it's getting, but again, I feel like if you were to take a chance to watch this movie, you might be as entertained or find some elements that you may enjoy throughout this film as well too. But what were some of your overall thoughts as well? Did you enjoy the film? Did you hate it? Comment down below and let me know. And hey, feel free to subscribe for more videos on the channel. I'm Night Owl, and thank you for watching.